All right, the yogurt shop murders. I know a lot of people have been talking about this on social media now, and they've been talking about it actually for a couple months because the yogurt shop murders was a new docu-series released on HBO earlier in August. I actually was watching some of this last night, getting more familiar with the background of the case. Now, there has been a suspect identified through DNA. So I'm going to take you through the timeline here that we know of, what happened in the crimes, and how the Austin, Texas Police Department was able to get to this new suspect, who he is, and what his background is. So let's talk about the crimes themselves. You can see these girls, all teenagers, who were found dead inside an Austin yogurt shop in December of 1991. Those teens, their names: Eliza Thomas, Jennifer Harbison, her sister Sarah Harbison, and Amy Ayers. This was a horrific discovery. The four girls were found shot, bound with their own clothes, and the yogurt shop was set on fire. Now, this has been a cold case for many years, but there were people who were convicted in this case over the past decades. Two different men. They were both self-implicated. They basically confessed to the crime, and then that went through, and they were arrested, they were charged, and actually convicted. But both of those convictions were overturned because there was just never enough evidence that actually pointed to them being the suspects, being the killers of these teenagers. So a lot of times with cold cases, they might sit on the shelves for many years until a new detective takes over and kind of a new set of eyes, just a fresh set to look through. What haven't we done? What can we do now with technology? And obviously, as anybody knows watching this show, DNA is basically everything. So a new detective took over the case in 2022, and he submitted a shell casing that was found in the drain of the yogurt shop to a lab. That casing came back to a murder in Kentucky in 1998, same kind of casing. That detective also submitted a rape kit to multiple labs, and that came back as a match to a South Carolina lab that had had a sexual assault and murder out of 1990. Well, that man and the DNA that it hit was also linked to a 1997 rape of a 14-year-old girl out of Tennessee. What authorities didn't know was how widespread this was all going to be. Once they started making this match with these other cases in other states, they realized, wait a minute, the suspect that may be now linked to the DNA here with these girls is actually a serial rapist and a serial killer. So I want to play sound for you now from the Austin police chief about how they made this discovery and who this man is that they now suspect is responsible for the murders of the 4 teens in the yogurt shop.
After 34 years, the Austin police have made a significant breakthrough in this case. This is one of the most devastating and haunting cases in this city's history. This unthinkable crime has weighed heavily on the hearts and the minds of the family, the community, and the detectives who have tirelessly worked this case. As a mother, I cannot begin to imagine just the grief and the pain that you have endured. For the families of Amy, Eliza, Sarah, and Jennifer, today marks a critical step forward in honoring not only their memory, but getting at truth and accountability. We now have evidence linking a specific individual to this case, Robert Eugene Brashers. The only physical evidence located at that scene has been matched to him, and his DNA has since been, and before this connection, he has been connected to murders and rapes across the country.
Learned a lot about Robert Brashers since this discovery was made, and I think a lot of people are just so stunned by the fact that 34 years later, we're now finally solving these cases. Now, here's the thing. Robert Brashers is not alive. He died in a standoff with police in 1999. He killed himself during that standoff, and now authorities believe the gun he used to kill himself at that time was the same gun that he used for most of the murders in the yogurt shop. Here's what else we learned. He committed at least 4 other murders between 1990 and 1998. In 2018, Missouri authorities actually identified Brashers as the perpetrator of several violent crimes across Missouri, South Carolina, and Tennessee. That included that 1997 rape and a 1998 murder of a Missouri mother and her 12-year-old daughter. Now, police did not know why Brashers would have been in Austin at the time of the yogurt shop murders. We don't know. Was he out there casing the area? Was he looking for people? Was he looking for a certain set of young girls and teens to target? At the time, two of those teens actually worked at the yogurt shop and they were closing up the shop with their friends and their sister at the time of these murders. But we do know that he was seen at an El Paso truck stop 2 days after the yogurt shop murders. And police said he was actually driving to Arizona to visit his dad. He was in a stolen truck out of Georgia, and he tried to flee when he was stopped by authorities. He was eventually detained and arrested on charges of auto theft and being a felon in a possession of a firearm. I did a little bit of research here because when I saw Arizona, I was like, okay, there's an Arizona tie to this story. I didn't know that. Here's what I found out. Robert Brasher's dad lived in Glendale for about 11 years from 1990 to 2003. He was reportedly visiting his dad during that time, but he never made it here because he got arrested. Both of his parents died many years ago, so we don't have the ability to actually ask his parents more about him or what may have happened. But he does have a biological daughter. I've reached out to her. She did do an interview with a station in Austin earlier this week, but I'm hoping to be able to connect with her and possibly learn a little bit more about this. Did she know about her father's violent past? Obviously, he died many years ago, but now this really just shines so much light into a much bigger deal here. When they were able to identify Brashers in 2018 for those other crimes, they also exhumed his body, which means now they have his confirmed DNA. And it wasn't just the shell casing in the drain at the yogurt shop that matched the gun that Brashers used, but his DNA actually matched DNA that was found under the fingertips of victim Amy Ayers. And the thing with DNA is that it is foolproof. And that is why it is so important that we preserve DNA the best we can and that these labs are able to now look at degraded DNA that we wouldn't have been able to test before because it is solving crimes just like this. And now they're able to have some closure. But for these families, this has been so tough. And I know a lot of people watch the HBO series, family members interviewed in that series. One of those family members is Sonora Thomas. She's the sister of victim Eliza Thomas. Sonora was just 13 years old when her sister was killed. And for her, this update, sure, it does bring answers, but it also brings another emotion too.
Our reality doesn't change after today. Our families are still too small, still missing an essential ingredient, and we are lesser for it. We have been robbed of a life with nieces and nephews and grandchildren, and with sisters to grow old with.
You can just hear the raw emotion with those families. Obviously, this is a lot to process, but they've had to live so long without those young girls ever being able to grow up. Authorities do believe that Robert Eugene Brashers is probably responsible for a lot of other crimes across the country. And so the hope is now that with this identification in such a high-profile case, that there might be other agencies who will be able to test DNA against the DNA in this case, possibly for other rapes or other murders across the country. It is likely somebody who is this brazen and driving from state to state to state committing murders like this and rapes would be able to do this in such a prolific manner that it's likely these aren't the only ones that he committed. So a big update in a massive national high-profile case. It is finally closure for those families, and we're thankful to be able to report all of that tonight.